Hello, everyone, and welcome to College Week. So glad all of you can join us for this workshop, Careers in Business and Tech with Management Leadership for Tomorrow. Before getting started, we'd like to know our audience. Please take a brief moment to complete the poll that will pop up on your screen soon. As a heads up, we will have another poll at the end of this workshop, so we do hope you stick around. Thank you all again for joining us, and now I hand it over to James Colton to get us started. James?
Great. Thank you, Christina, so much for having us here. We had another panel earlier in the day, and it was a lot of fun. So I'm going to let let me do a quick intro for myself first. James Colton again, Associate Director of Recruitment and Admissions at MLT. I've been with MLT coming up on 7 years, and I went to Hope College in Holland, Michigan. So I'll now let kind of all the other panelists do a quick intro, but we'll have the time to do some longer intros in a little bit. So let's go Alfonso first.
Awesome. Thank you, James. And hi, everyone. My name is Alfonso Mejia. I was born in Santa Barbara, California, but to be honest, I was raised in South Florida as a proud first-generation Colombian American. I went to the University of Florida where I studied finance, and while I was at University of Florida, I was part of the Management Leadership for Tomorrow career prep program, in which I started, I did an internship that first summer with Wells Fargo in Atlanta doing commercial banking. And then right after did a fall business internship with Google out of the Ann Arbor, Michigan office, in which I returned full time. And then about after a year and a half on that team, I then switched over to YouTube, which is where I am now, based out of San Bruno, where I support all of the Spanish-speaking Latin American YouTube partnerships. But now I'm actually focusing on Canada. So things kind of shifted in my portfolio, but that's a little about me and really excited to be here. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm just kind of looking straight down the list. So go Zach, then Heavenly, then Bria.
Sure, thanks. So I'm Zach Singleton. I'm from Oakland, California. I studied at UC Berkeley in undergrad. Right after that, I joined Deloitte Consulting, where I spent 4.5 years. And then toward the end of my time at Deloitte is when I became associated with MLT and joined the MBA prep class of 2010. I ended up going to business school at Stanford. While there, I interned at Google, as well as at a startup in Helsinki, Finland. And then I also spent a little time with the Warriors while I was in business school that summer, doing like in-arena innovation for their new Chase Center and like coming up with how they could leverage apps and things like that in the arena for fan experience. Then I joined Google full-time as a strategist within the trust and safety team, and stayed there about 3 years. And 4 years ago, I joined Uber, which is where I am now, and I lead the privacy product team there. And it's been a fun ride. So that's a little bit about me.
Great. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Heavenly Johnson. It's really nice to meet you all. So I grew up in Tennessee, actually. I went to University of North Carolina for undergrad, and I studied marketing and international studies. Right after that, I did ad sales to small businesses for Bell South, and then I went and worked for Target in Minneapolis doing merchandising. I then went to Duke for my MBA, and that's kind of where I came across MLT through going back to grad school. I have been pretty much in marketing kind of since then. So I interned with Kraft Foods. I worked for Procter & Gamble for a while, then SC Johnson, then Pharmavite, which makes nature-made vitamins. So I did marketing for like anything you could buy in a Walmart. And then I switched over to tech about 3 years ago. I started working for Intuit on QuickBooks Self-Employed, doing marketing there. And then 1.5 years ago, I moved over to Facebook, and now I'm doing international marketing. So great to talk to you all.
I think that leaves me.
Yep. Yep.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bria Alexander. I am currently a brand experience program manager at Adobe within our design organization. I am from San Jose, California, currently living in San Jose, California, and I went to the Howard University in Washington, D.C., where I signed up for or was accepted into our 2015 CP class. I was CP 2015 as part of MLT. And through MLT, I was able to get this incredible internship at this place called the Creative Artists Agency, which is an agency out in LA, which deals with a lot of the most famous people you can think of. It was an amazing, incredible experience that allowed me to get the job that I have today, kind of in between the creative space and also like the professional working, I guess, more traditional working space. And it's been a joy and a pleasure ever since. I took the role at Adobe right out of undergrad, and I've been there for about 4.5 years now. And I've taken a lot of different jobs within Adobe. I started off as a program manager for a sales enablement team, and I've been really happy to find a home on the design team for the past 1.5 years or so. And I am so thrilled to meet with you guys and talk more about my experiences and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you all. I'm really excited. This is an awesome lineup. For all of our attendees, you can use the chat box or the Q&A box to chat any questions you have throughout the presentation. We'll weave in all of your questions as we chat about college and career decisions. As a lot of the panelists mentioned, we are MLT. Just to give you a really high level view of who we are. So we are a national nonprofit. We work or have impact in 3 areas, and one is economic mobility, so helping fellows achieve high trajectory jobs. Another area is developing diverse leaders, so understanding that we need to diversify corporate leadership, specifically at the C-suite or at the executive level. And then this in turn creates diverse institutions. So we want our institutions, our major business to reflect the overall population. And then one of the characteristics, so this is Superheroes Fight for Education Week. And so the superhero quality that we want to highlight today is scrappiness. And so scrappiness it's an MLT term we use a lot. But scrappy is demonstrating an unwavering resolve to do whatever is necessary to achieve the best results for everyone involved, no matter how difficult. And so I'm going to break this down into a couple different parts right now. First is unwavering resolve. This relates to perseverance and grit, but it's ultimately taking on challenges head on. We also consider scrappiness to include a bit of savviness. So this relates to how do we navigate through our careers? How do we develop relationships? How do we make good decisions and use our knowledge to help those around us? When it comes to achievement, this is our results-driven mindset. We push our fellows to be excellent in everything that they do. And then finally is community. And so any definition of scrappy has to include community for us, because we want to lift others as we climb ourselves and make kind of the world better around us. So with that, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and kind of get into the first, one of the first questions I have for our panelists, which is, I think a lot of you mentioned, where did you go to college? But talk us through your decision of how did you decide to go to college, and which college did you decide to attend, and for what reasons? So I'll kind of leave it open to whoever wants to start first. Bria.
See, I gave myself away with the head nod. I'm like, so who's gonna go first? I'll gladly go first. So I am a 3rd generation college graduate. My grandmother went to college for the first time, and my parents went to college for the first time. And so college was never really an option for me. It was very, very clear by the time I was like 3 or 4 that you're going to college. And as maybe some other people on the panel might have experienced, but my parents wanted what in their view was the best college for me. They wanted me to go to Harvard. They wanted me to go to Stanford. And while my mother did go to Spelman College, which is a phenomenal school, like an HBCU was definitely not immediately on the horizon for me when I was first looking when I was in high school. And I applied. I was really fortunate to get an academic scholarship to Howard, and the most competitive one at that. I had gotten to Georgetown as well, but like it was clear that Howard was the best financial decision for me and my family to attend. And honestly, it was the biggest blessing of my life. Like anyone that knows me in my personal life will tell you that I cannot stop talking about how positive my Howard experience was. It was better than any school I could have gone to, regardless of how well funded it was, because to me, it really gave me the knowledge that I felt like I needed to understand what it means to be a person of color in the United States, and what it means that you are, kind of the bounty and the responsibility that you have as a person of color who has the opportunity to be educated, to take that knowledge with you and spread it out throughout the world. So as far as the college I decided to go to, it was kind of like happenstance that I ended up going to Howard, but that's just, I guess, the fate's looking out for me, because I could not have had a more positive experience there. And I would do it all again if given the chance. I think another part of your question was around like why or what the experience was. I'm sorry, like remind me. I remember the part about why I went to college and
the decision-making process around college.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, I got into some really good schools. I know I'm from California, and a big priority for me when I was applying to college was I wanted to get out of California. I wanted to get away from everything I had experienced thus far. I didn't want to be limited. I don't want to just have my own adventures outside and just see what was possible for me. And when it came down to it, the schools that were furthest away from home that I got into were Georgetown and Howard. And again, the money pointed towards Howard. And I'm so lucky that it did, because I had the world's best experience there.
Thanks.
As for me, on the other hand, I was actually a first generation college student, so none of my family went to college. My mom, I think, finished up to high school, and that was it. My dad got up to middle school, so for me, it was just like college wasn't really ever discussed at all in like the dinner table. So I grew up with a single mom, but she definitely valued education so much, because she'd always talk about how she was like really smart in school and how she like skipped second grade. So I was always like kind of heard of that. I'm like, wow, that sounds so cool. I want to be a good student too. So I never really knew why I was working hard in school, to be honest. I didn't know what was the end goal. But kind of just how like society kind of places it. Then I get to high school, and then I'm one of the top students in my class, but also I was very active in student leadership. I was class president for all 4 years throughout my high school. And that really kind of resonated on me, because I thought, wait, I could actually strive to try to go to the best like university possible. But I set a limit of, I'm pretty sure I can't get in anywhere out of state. So I kind of just said, I'm staying within Florida. And because one, it was the affordable option. And I only applied to 3 schools, the top 3 state schools in Florida. And I said, basically my thing was, whichever one I can go the cheapest or for free, I'm going to go to that one, and for it being the best one. And thankfully and similar to Bria, I wanted to leave home. I didn't want to leave Florida per se, but I wanted to be far from home, because for me, typical Latino household, it's, oh, you stay home and you live at home and you just go to school to your nearest school to you. And I wanted to kind of break that cycle. I'm like, no, I'm going just how the rest of everyone goes. I'm going home, I'm going away. And that was my decision making process. And I kind of said, okay, I got into University of Florida, and I got into the other schools as well. But I will say one thing is, don't set boundaries for yourself, because I kind of now live with the, what if I could have gotten in somewhere else? But doesn't matter, because I love my experience and everything will work out for you. But I did set those boundaries of staying within Florida. And, I who knows, my life could have been totally different. I'm really happy where I am right now, but I'm just saying.
Yeah. Thanks,
I can go next. My story is a little bit of a comeback, and because we've been using the word scrappy, comeback, scrappy story. I went into high school and I was more of a jock. So I was captain of the basketball team, starting on varsity 3 years. Didn't have the best grades. I was a drummer in rock band as well. So those were my things. And then coming to the end of high school, like you go meet your college counselor and she's like, where do you want to go? And for me, like I was still in the sports. So I cared about schools that were good at sports and maybe academics. I was like Duke or USC, and she like shows me like a list of schools you can get into, and those schools are like far off the list. So I ended up getting rejected from every single high school I applied, sorry, not high school, every college I applied to in the state of California outside of high school. And then I got into University of Oregon and I got into University of Miami. And so I transferred. You remember I graduated from UC Berkeley, but I went out to Miami and it was more of a party school. So I was like, I think I had enough fun in high school. So like I'm gonna go to Oregon. So I went up there to start, got really good grades, and transferred actually to USC. But the problem when I got to USC after my first year was that it was very expensive, and I'm first in my family to go to college, so I'm kind of figuring out all of this. And my mom didn't care much about college, but she cared about like your debt and like what is your income like. So maybe she was into finance without knowing it. But so then I ended up leaving USC only because it was too expensive for me to pay for. Like I had like 30,000 in loans after that first year. So I transferred to UC Berkeley as a junior and graduated from there. And even after all that moving, it was what, like 3 universities and a couple of junior colleges at the same time. Still finished it all in 4.5 years, but graduated with my degree in economics from UC Berkeley. So that was my story. And I was much better around figuring out how to apply to grad school when it came to that.
Yeah, thanks, Zach.
So similar to Bria, I think I'm also 3rd gen for college. And so kind of growing up, it was always like, obviously that's what you're going to go do. And so when I was thinking about where I wanted to go, I grew up in Tennessee. I was born in North Carolina. All my extended family's there. And I wanted to go away, and I didn't apply to anywhere in Tennessee. So I knew I was going to go away. And a couple of things happened. Like one, I like went to Carolina and I just like fell in love with the place. Like I just felt, I was like, this is just the best place ever. 2, it let me get away from home, but I had family like within an hour, which my family felt pretty good about. My parents felt good about that. And then 3, I got into a program that was just really aligned with my interest. And so it was like their first year doing it. And I was like, wow, that sounds really interesting. And so kind of all of that came together. And that program allowed me to come out of undergrad with no debt, which is great. And so all of that came together, and ended up in Chapel Hill, which was amazing.
Well, thanks. So one of the goals of our panel is obviously to help all of our attendees understand what's the path to get from high school to college and then from college into a career. So the next kind of thing is that once you arrived at your respective colleges or when you graduated with degrees, how did you end up picking your major? What was the major picking process like?
I'll go. So I liked math a lot and science. And I had a college counselor just say, like, if you like math so much, like you should try economics. It's like applied to, something you might not really know about yet, but just try it out. And I did. And I stuck with that. That's kind of how I found my major was just related to something else. And I had kind of researched that you could get a decently paying job with that kind of a major, which was important to me. So that's how I picked mine.
When I went to college, I knew I wanted to be a biomedical engineer. Like I knew it in my soul. And then I got there and I started taking like all the stuff that you have to take across different disciplines in the first couple of years. And then I was like, well, I really like this creative writing stuff and I really like this philosophy stuff. And then like some international stuff came up. And so I kind of fell into, it was kind of like when I got around junior year, I had this collection of credits and I was like, well, it looks like I'm an international studies major. And then I took some business classes and I ended up with a business major, which is to say I had a plan going in. And then I just started figuring out like what I was actually interested in when I got there. And I came out in a totally different place than I thought I would. So I fell into my major, I think.
I'm going to piggyback off of Heavenly because we had very, very similar experiences. I got into Howard as a political science major because I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. And then I learned what lawyers like actually did. And I was like, I'm not doing this. So I was very much lost. I had never heard of like marketing or like a business major, anything. And then I was at like, was a freshman in college feeling really confused and not sure what to do. And someone got up on stage and said they were an international business major. And I was like, that sounds great. Sounds like they'll give me an opportunity to leave the country. And that was like where the initial like spark came from. But once I actually got into the classes and the major, I had to transfer from the College of Arts and Sciences into the School of Business. But it was a really, really wonderful decision for me. The more I learned about like what business majors do and just the variety of different opportunities that it provided to me, like all the different types of things I can do with a business degree, that was like incredibly appealing for me. And I also did get to achieve the country international business. I figured they'd send me international, and they did, which made me very happy. I got to study abroad in France, which was a life-changing experience for me. It was like, but before I went to college, I didn't even like know what to ask for. I didn't even know what was possible out of my life because these opportunities just weren't available for me. Like my mother left the country for the first time for when she turned 50 years old. And I expected that to be kind of par for the course. Like these opportunities just didn't come across for me. But going to college, like introduced me to an entirely different world. And so if you're a little bit worried, like for those who are out there about what you want to do, or you don't know what you're going to do, just know that you may not have all of the information yet. Because that was certainly the experience that I had when I was in high school. Like I did not know enough about what was out there to be able to choose what truly was the best fit for me. So if you want any advice I would give, I would just say like, trust yourself that you will make the best decision for yourself when you have all the information available. So if you don't know right now, wait a couple minutes, wait a week, learn more, experience a little bit more life, and then it'll become really, really clear to you when something is that fit, that thing that you want to do, something you're interested in and pursuing.
Yeah, that was really well said. So I don't know how to top that off, but very much so agree with everything everyone said. Similar to Zach, for me, I was like, which major will secure me a job after graduation? So I was very much so, because I graduated high school in 2012. Mind you, yeah, with the economy is already recovering from, but one thing I kept on hearing was, oh, like it was like such a thing, if you graduate without a job is like not a good thing, right? So I was really scared of that. I'm like, I don't want to go to college and graduate with no job. So I was so keen on like making sure that I would have to get an internship, whatever it was. So thankfully I met with MLT, and then that kind of just took me to the next level. But I just was very keen on that. So I started off actually as an accounting major, because that one I feel like has like for sure guaranteed a job. But truthfully, I didn't do well on the first intro accounting class, and I was like, crap, I failed. This is not good. And then I switched over to finance, which was like the next door neighbor of it. Still very rigorous, because I also didn't get the grade needed in that first attempt. But I thought, okay, no, this can't be happening. Like I need to finish something. So I tried it one more time, and then thankfully was able to do well there. But needless to say I remember showing up to college orientation day, where you're supposed to like bubble in what your major is going to be, where you declare it. I put political science because, similar to Bria, I thought I wanted to go to law school, because so keep that in mind, that you will have time to change your mind. That's totally fine. But make sure you kind of set your North Star being, well, is employment going to be your number one priority? And if so, what exactly about it? Or is actually grad school or professional school, like medical school, for instance, or law school? And if that's the case, set that kind of North Star. Like I heard this thing that said, like, every decision you make today should be what you want to do in like 5 years. So that's how you should kind of think of it and look at it. So yeah.
Thanks. I want to kind of piggyback on something Bria mentioned, is in terms of like helping you all understand what's out there. So a lot of you are very familiar with the companies that are represented on the call, and I think I'll let everyone talk about what their company is in a sec. Uber was not a company when I started college. So sometimes like the companies that you're going to end up at, they have not yet been created. So that's also something else to keep in mind. But with that being said, would love everyone to kind of give a really brief overview of like, what is your company? I think folks should know what YouTube and Uber are these days, but then talk about what are you working on your team specifically, and what's your specific role right now. I don't know who wants to start there.
I think you said it, like people, yeah, you guys know what Uber is. I guess we're becoming a lot more though. We started as a ride sharing company only. We started delivering food. We like to think of ourselves these days as a platform for going to and getting things. So either going somewhere or you're getting something using Uber. And you're probably going to see that apply to, a lot more verticals as we move into the future. What I do there is build privacy and security products across all of those apps that Uber to be known for, whether it's like rider, driver, or eater experience app. My overall goal is to ensure that our users trust us and that we're bringing them choice and transparency with everything that we do. So in order to bring you kind of these sort of magical experiences that let you just press a button, right? And you don't even have to type in your address about where you're at, and food shows up in a few minutes. We have to collect some information from you or about you in a moment. And my job is to make sure that we are protecting that data, only using it for what we tell you we're using it for, and then discarding it. So, and as you guys think about, the subject of artificial intelligence, or, the fact that more people are starting to have like either a Google Home or an Amazon Echo in their house. And as we move forward, the field that I work in will be probably even more important, because it's going to require more data from people to power the experiences of the future. So that's kind of what I work on, and I never imagined I would be in the field, but it's a whole lot of fun. And I get to see everything the company does or is thinking of doing pretty early on, because they want to know, like, Zach, like, what do we need to be thinking about from a privacy or security perspective? So, yeah.
Awesome.
I can jump in. So Facebook launched when I was in undergrad, which is crazy. So my job definitely did not exist when I was in high school or college. I work in international marketing, and I manage a team of 4 or so people. And we are just really looking at, like, how do people feel about the company, and how do people feel about Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram in emerging markets? And so, we're obviously very prevalent here in the US and Europe, but when we think about Latin America, emerging markets within Sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, we are looking at, why are people maybe not using the internet, and how do we talk to them about even starting to use the internet for the first time? And then once they're on the internet, talking to them about Facebook's apps. I think the other thing that we do is we think about those users and consumers and the role of Facebook. So example being COVID, right? You've got a lot of people in these markets who don't have great digital literacy. They just don't, like, in media savvy and understanding. And you have a ton of potential for misinformation around the pandemic. And so my team is also working on, like, how do we get people the critical information that they need to be able to stay safe? So we do a ton of different things. So yeah, every day looks very, very different.
I can go. I work at Adobe, which is the Photoshop company. We have a Creative Cloud suite, an Acrobat suite. We're the company that created PDFs. So we are around. Specifically, I work within the design team as a program manager, which is a person that connects all sorts of different teams to make sure that they talk to each other. So the legal department, the sales department, the HR team, depending on the project, it's my job to make sure all of these teams are connected and that we meet certain deadlines to make sure that things don't fall apart. I consider us to be like the hinges to a door, because if you try to open a door with no hinges, as some of us may have experienced, things don't go so hot. So I consider myself as like the hinges. And I have a very broad charter currently. Right now, specifically, I'm on the brand and icons team project. So if you may have seen, Adobe recently went through a rebrand of all of its products, Creative Cloud, Document Cloud, and Experience Cloud. And it's my team's job to provide different examples for our senior level executives to determine, like, what the new face and shape and how Adobe's brand should be interpreted in the future. And I do that through a team of designers. We've got an icon team, design team located out of Germany that is absolutely incredible. And we've also got our brand design team based here in San Francisco, and I work between those 2 teams. I also work on an AI and prototyping tool called Canvas, which is awesome. Adobe talks a lot about creativity for all, and we really mean that, including folks that can't draw like myself. So Canvas is a tool that you can use. It's not open to the public quite yet, maybe one day, but it's a prototyping tool so that you can draw something on like a canvas, and then it'll automatically turn it into not a drawing, but a photorealistic painting. So that is something else that I'm working on. And finally, I'm also the program manager for the content strategy team, which is the team that determines, like, if you get an error message in any state, what that error message says. Is it error? Is it canceled? Is it no? Is it stop? We are the words people that determine what words go in the product and what words we use to describe what the product is doing, which can turn into a really, really big job for anyone that's ever opened the Photoshop tool and looked at it, because there's a lot going on there. There's a lot of icons, there's a lot of tools, there's a lot of directions. But I found it to be such a joy and a pleasure to work with a lot of creatives. I talked about this a little bit earlier in my story, but I had this wonderful creative internship that I got through MLT that kind of taught me what's possible out of like a career. I have not mentioned this yet, but I was an international business and finance major. And my first internship I had before I joined the MLT program was at JP Morgan Chase, where it was a very, very technical internship. I worked in Excel spreadsheets for the entire 10 weeks, 12 weeks. And while I did get the return offer, I just felt very unfulfilled and like I wasn't taking full use of the natural talents I had sitting behind a computer in the dark on the 14th floor of a building in the middle of Midtown. It just wasn't a great fit for me, even though it did provide me a way to pay my bills. So in Adobe, I found, I guess the impetus came from my creative artist agency experience, but at Adobe, I found a way to really take that creativity and really push myself to ask for more and just realize what's possible out of a career. Like, as you've heard from other panelists, like so much of my focus when I was younger and so much of a lot of folks' focus when you're younger is just to get a job so you can make a living, to like get out of your parents' house or just get out of your current situation. But I feel so fortunate that I found a lot of, I guess, creative satisfaction in addition to professional satisfaction from my job. And that was something that I did not even know was possible. Again, going back to just not knowing enough to know what's possible or what to ask for. So that is my story, and that is what I do for a living.
Cool. Hey everyone, so I'm over at YouTube, and YouTube tries to just be the #1 destination video platform across the board, but now we're also venturing into the TV ecosystem, as you might have seen, as like the NBA Finals was like sponsored with YouTube TV for the first time ever, which is a big win. But what I focus on is specifically on the partnership side. So picture, your favorite YouTuber and or partner. So you could either be an individual creator, right? Like for instance, Heavenly can open up her channel, and then her channel could have a bunch of subscribers and a lot of attention and eyeballs watching that channel. And the more attention and watch time that she gets on that channel, the more chances she will have to make money from her content. So my job is to essentially work with those partners that are already at the threshold that they can generate money through YouTube. So I specifically work with the Latin American partnerships. Some names that might be familiar are the US Hispanic partners, such as Univision and Telemundo. So they obviously own a bunch of content across the platform. And what I work with them specifically is their dedicated digital teams on the Univision and Telemundo side. And in tandem with our strategic partner managers, we basically help them drive their efforts to make them more money. So what's nice about it is it's not necessarily sales, because we're not asking them for money. Instead, we're actually giving them a strategic advice on how we can help them get more money. So that's essentially kind of like the bulk of what I do. Of course, similar to Bria, how I would describe myself as more of like a firefighter, because a lot of it is putting out fires. Whenever something goes wrong, like, oh, there's, for instance, like the presidential debate, Univision's live stream is down. What's going on? So it's like kind of helping fix that on that side, kind of like, fixing the hinges on the door. But sometimes it's like really like smoldering. So it's like, I put out the fire. But what's also, I run the spectrum across the board, from not working with just like broadcasters, but also individual creators, like your Logan Pauls of the world, equivalents, but for my market, and also the music realm. So a big vertical we have is music. And that's been really exciting for me. But the most exciting of it all has been able to work with Colombia as a market, because being from Colombia, I've been able to go sit and talk to the CEO of these channels, or like broadcasters, that I grew up watching with my grandma. So when I told my grandma, oh yeah, grandma, I'm meeting with RCN, it's just crazy. And then I'm like super young in those meetings, talking to like these people, basically advising them as someone who's not even living in their country anymore, but being able to be fluent in Spanish with still the Colombian accent. They're like amazed, like to see that. So it's been really full circle for me in my role, and I've been super happy about it. And honestly, you guys just kind of trust the plan, trust the process, because it'll all work out for you.
Yeah. Thanks. That's a great segue. I was going to kind of segue into maybe how do we solve problems, but I think I actually kind of want to go a different direction and talk about, so there's skills that you picked up in college, obviously, and then there's skills that you've picked up kind of in the professional world. So maybe for each of you, can you highlight maybe one important skill that you learned in college and then another skill that you've learned now that you've been out in the professional world for a number of years?
I would say dealing with people. Like, I want to start with dealing with people. So like in undergrad, you or just in school in general, things are cut up very clearly. Like if you've got a teacher you do not like, if you have a teacher you do not like, you don't really have to deal with that person after about 3 months if you're on the quarter system, right? If there's someone that you do not get along with, you do not have to deal with that person. You don't have to be with them like in an intimate way, see them every single day. But at work, no, that is not an option. Like you get all sorts of different personalities that you're working with at work. You get people who may not like you because you remind them of someone else. You don't have as much control over your environment when you are working versus when you are in school. And that was probably the most difficult transition for me, to have to deal with people who may have a problem. I don't want to describe it as a problem, but people who may not have a taste for you being around very much, or they just do not like your personalities don't mesh, what have you, and being able to need to work for that person or work alongside that person for the better end of your career or for the betterment of your of the company's ends. And that is the hardest part. That's like the biggest skill I would say you have to learn, and learn quickly, because while people and their personalities, there's a myriad of different people and different types of people, and et cetera, and everyone has to work at the end of the day. And if you work in corporate America and you're a person of color, 99%, let me not say 99% of the time, because that sounds very unoptimistic, but most of the time you're going to work with someone that does not know you. You may be the only person of color or Black person that they have ever met. And sometimes they're going to say things that are inappropriate that they don't even realize is inappropriate, or things that are disrespectful. And so I had to learn how to manage those personalities. And that's, the races thing is one example. There are other parts. Some people like to bring their politics into work really passionately. It runs the gamut of what you can run into at work. And really you can run into anything. And just knowing that you have to manage those relationships in a way that you are always benefiting from it. And also just managing your own feelings about it. That to me is probably like the biggest skill and most important skill, I would say, that I've had to learn quickly in my professional life that I didn't know. As far as skills in undergrad, I think the point of getting an undergraduate degree isn't necessarily the degree per se, it's the experience of finishing. It's showing to employers that you were able to start something and finish it to completion in a big way. That to me is like the point of the degree, not necessarily the major itself. And so what I learned is just how to finish, like not giving up when I am discouraged. Like I, similar to Alfonso, also failed my first accounting class, and I had never failed anything in my entire life. And that was like a very, very big moment for me, where it's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Am I even supposed to be here? Is this supposed to be my degree? I thought I was going to do so well. And just learning how to be resilient enough to complete something, even though life throws all sorts of crazy things at you to get there. So those are my two. Undergrad is doing something to completion, and then my professional life is learning how to deal with and manage really, really unique and different and personalities I wouldn't necessarily choose to be around in my personal life.
For me, I would say what I learned in undergrad is leadership, and what I've learned now in the corporate, now that I'm working, advocating for oneself. So I'll quickly say the leadership piece, and it's so important because yes, while I was in high school, I was very actively involved in like student government, etc. But in undergrad, I was, being involved in student organizations really is like the bread and butter of for me, at least, of the skills I had. So that when I jumped into the workplace, I already knew how to, kind of project manage, because I think a lot of, like, for me, work is just a bunch of like side projects happening, and then you have your core job that you always need to make sure is going well. So in college, that's your schoolwork. Those are your grades. That always needs to be going well, but you also need to make sure that all your concurrent, side projects are also going well. And that means working in multiple different teams. And that's going to be, in one team, you might be someone who is, on the more passive side of the team, or on some you're actually leading. So it's just being able to, adapt and shapeshift across so many different teams. And some places you might be a member, while others you might be an active participant. It all truly just runs the spectrum. And I learned that very much so in college, because the student organizations I was a part of really helped me, like, one, because I cared for the student organization, right? Because being a part of it, and I wanted to see it grow. And through that, I just learned, like, executing through passion, and getting stuff done that way. And then, you make it to the workplace, and then cool, you have that already built up, but then you realize that you think school ends with just a diploma, you get your GPA, you're done. But at least at Google, every 6 months, we have performance review, which, funny enough, I find out this Friday what my review is for the whole 12-month period, because COVID kind of switched things up a little bit. But regardless, that right there is it's like, for me, I've realized, like, you can't waver on just like, oh, cool, I'll just kind of wait to see what happens and what I get. No, you need to fight for yourself and really advocate for yourself, because there's no other better advocate than yourself, because you're the one who's putting in the work and doing the work. So you need to really take the time. And feedback I always got when I started off was like, oh, like, where's your documentation? Like, where did that all go? And I'd say, oh, I just, because I'm not used to having to keep receipts, because that's like, I don't do things for the receipts. I do this just because for the end goal or whatever it may be. But I shortly realized, no, all the work could easily be dismissed and discarded if there's no receipts. So keep your receipts. So then you could simply, when the time comes, it's like, here's everything. And then on top of that, the feedback you get from your peers and your managers, that's only going to supplement your work that you just put in. So that's what I learned thus far, of course, amongst many other things, but those I would say would be the most critical.
Thanks.
I would say an undergrad. The biggest thing that I learned was just setting my own priorities, and like, really, for me, it was the first time, like, all the way up through school, you knew what time you had to get up, you knew what time you had to be at school, you knew these were the classes you had to take. And it's like, for the first time, you're kind of thrown out there. And it's on you to be disciplined. It's on you to make those choices. And it is very true when you look at, I would recommend surrounding yourself with people who are going to push you and help keep you accountable. So I think for me, that was the big thing in undergrad. I think working, I think it's just kind of what Alfonso mentioned, being proactive and advocating for what you want. Because I think it's very easy when you get inside a company that's like, well, of course I want to get promoted, and of course I want to do better here. And so for me, it's been like to very much force myself to stop and say, like, is this really what I want? Do I really want that thing? And if not, looking around and saying, like, well, then what is it that I want if it's not this? So I think those have been the two big things for me.
And I guess for me, in undergrad, the thing that I learned was really how to leverage other people's skills, for your own improvement as well as theirs. So I did a lot of studying in groups, especially once I transferred to Berkeley. I just kind of looked at my syllabus and I was like, yeah, there's no way I know all of this, or I'm getting through all of it, by myself. And, this is maybe where that background of being a team sport person in high school paid off, because I was a point guard. I'm used to that. So I had to find who was good at making threes, who could dunk, who was good at making layups in the college context, right? And we all came together and we were kind of a super team and we all did well. And that was how, like, I got through a very rigorous major, which is economics in undergrad. Now, different studying styles work for different people, but I have carried that model forward in the workplace as well. I think what I learned from work is really just the importance of having a North Star. And what I mean by that is knowing, not, where you want to, what your goal is for tomorrow or today, but what is your goal like 5 years from now? Or like, why are you even joining a company? Like, what are you personally coming there to get out of it, and also to give or impact in terms of impacting the community that you're joining? That's been very important to me, because especially as I heard things like Bria was describing, like the drama that is the workplace, right? All the politics that go on. You may be, which I've been in a situation working for a manager where you guys are like oil and water and you don't mix. But because I always knew what I was there for, none of it ever bothered me. Kind of always rolled off the shoulder, like I was there for something greater. And I've always been able to move toward those goals because I had them, despite whatever chaos was going on in a company. Which, if you're going to face reorgs, you're going to face bad managers, you're going to face potentially layoffs. Hopefully not, but that is a reality. Like, all these things happen, and you kind of got to have this mindset of weathering that storm, and be focused on where you're going. So for me, I learned that in the workplace, or once I was already in the middle of my career.
Well, it looks like we've got, we're at the time where we can start to transition into some attendee questions. So I think there's one question, and I'm gonna give a really brief answer. So what should I look for in a college? And so I don't want to take away too much thunder from some of the sessions that are happening later today about financial aid. And then there are also some sessions through College Day on Thursday, also about budgeting for college. And then the college application timeline. So I don't want to steal too much thunder away, but would kind of encourage you to kind of reflect on what some of the panelists have shared about their college journeys and the decision-making process. And hopefully we can address some of that question through the next one, which is from Greena, which is, I have an 8th grader determined to be a YouTuber, and so thinks going to college is not important to be a YouTuber. What are your thoughts, panelists?
Well, I can go first. I think, why not both? I'm from that mentality of why not both? Because for me, I think, well, I mean, I have my biases, so I don't want, but I think, very frankly, one thing someone that they can never take away from you is your education. So keep that in mind, that your YouTube videos can always remain there, whatever it means, but they could be taken down at one point in time due to policy, due to so many different things. But your education, no one will take that away from you. So for me, I think I understand, like, it could be lucrative to, quickly just kind of become a YouTuber and all that. But as someone that works at YouTube, I can tell you, I think there's so much factors that depends on it. Like, one, the content; two, like, who's viewing it, who's watching it, etc. There's so much to be at play. But I would encourage the notion of really just thinking through, like, why not having both? I think I've seen really successful YouTubers like describe their journey to college or all of that, and have been very successful in that regard. And it's been great. And I think currently right now, a very Gen Z trend, especially with, like, the big rise of, like, TikTokers, et cetera, that have foregone, like, the option to go to college, and had really, amazing opportunities to go to great colleges and to play sports, all of that, but chose not to, is sending a different message. And truthfully, I know times are changing. So I could be faulted in my thinking to think that, no, college is the only thing to do. But I think it's still a little too soon to kind of say, hey, disregard college. So that's my opinion. But I'm a huge fan of Gen Z. I work with you all. And I know you all are the future. But one thing that has been around forever is education. And, education, has like that, you think of it as, like, just a college institution, but there's way more to that. It's the experience of being independent on your own that you learn, as Heavenly mentioned, that is such a big difference. That really makes all the difference. Like, literally, you're going to learn laundry. That's, the little things that you kind of learn, those are things you're not going to learn elsewhere, but you learn at college. So I would like for someone else to answer, just like from that,
Yeah, let's get one more response to that.
I have a couple thoughts here. I have friends who are, one, I would say, be expansive about how you think about college, right? So it may be a college that has an amazing film program, right? It could be something with a really heavy arts program, and something that could set you apart as a YouTuber and a content creator. So I wouldn't say, I think to Alfonso's point, like that it's an either or. I have friends who are artists and who have their degrees. And I think because they know they have their degree, they're able to have an amount of creative freedom because there's not the same amount of stress on what they're putting out, because they're like, if, you know, I can take this huge creative risk, and if it doesn't pan out, like, I have my accounting degree. And then the third thing I would say is, like, if you become a successful YouTuber, you're able to monetize, like, I would then encourage you to have enough of a business background to be able to be effective with that, and understand how you might want to invest, or how you might want to launch your own business, or like what you want to do with that. So I don't think they're mutually exclusive at all. And think that thinking about the degree intentionally can actually make you a better YouTuber.
Definitely. Sorry to jump back on, but I think that was a really good point, because the most, I think, astute YouTube creators that I work with are the ones that are educated, because they're the ones in tune and they don't have to like just follow what the agency tells them. And I think many times it's your own project, it's your own baby, your channel. You want to be the one driving that as if it were a business. So really good point there. And think of like artists, you know, like you have some artists like John Legend, you know, he's extremely educated, right? But you have that he kind of handles it all himself in house. But then you have others that, you know, just kind of are like maybe, you know, not necessarily in the weeds of the actual deals, and they should be. So
I appreciate you calling out John Legend. John Legend used to work at MLT way back when he was a consultant. So it's a nice little plug there. I think, so there's a good question about like, what are some good part-time jobs? So, I mean, thinking about funding college, obviously, you know, we have a lot of fellows who are working while they're in college. And so maybe one or two of you can reflect on some of the jobs that you had in college, and even thinking about the return on investment, the jobs that you had after graduation, how you use those to pay down debt.
Yeah, I had 3 different jobs when I was in undergrad. So the first was I was a lifeguard. I thought it was cool because well, once you go through all the certification and stuff like that, you get paid pretty decently for a short amount of preparation, especially at that stage of your career. Uh, After that, I worked at a country club, um, which is kind of a golf course that has a membership associated with it, just to explain what a country club is. And I was like kind of keeping the locker room of the place in order, um, cleaning golf carts, things of that nature. And then other than that, after those 2 things earlier in my college career, I started to do more professional uh, internships. So I worked at a small boutique investment bank, and I worked at an equity research firm as well. And quickly learned I never wanted to do those things. Um, yeah, but I think it's a time to try things out and kind of learn what you do and don't like. Yeah, you can use it in different ways. Curious what other folks have to say about it.
Yeah, does anyone want to?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bria.
I could quickly, I mean, the way that I guess, quote unquote, funded, I was really fortunate. I got a scholarship, and that's a big reason why I chose to go to Howard in the first place. And that covered a lot of my expenses. But the program that I was in offered a lot of like student-led competitions that came with cash prizes. And that I did that a lot. Like Deloitte had a competition where you work in partnership and you do like presentations for a certain pitch, and there's a $5,000 grand prize if you won. I didn't win a Deloitte one, but I did, like Marcia McClellan had one that was at $2,000. Like I participated in a lot of different like academic endeavors that were outside of like strictly my coursework, but had like money associated with them. And you would be surprised to see how many of those exist in a undergraduate institution. And some of them are targeted towards majors, but the business school I went to, they had a lot of opportunities like that. And that was very, very helpful towards me paying for everything that Howard didn't already come with. And also during my internships, I had an internship every summer except my freshman year. And I would save the money after the internship so I can kind of like use it throughout the year so I could like afford to live. And even then there's a fair amount of like what I would now consider like unacceptable, like penny pinching. Like I remember when I first started working, I never used to get my clothes dry cleaned. I'd always used to like wash my very, very like professional suits and stuff in the washing machine, and then I would steam them dry. And I wanted to continue to do this as I entered into my professional life. And my mom came to visit one. She's like, you have a job now. You can't, please, you just pay to go to the dry cleaners. I know you don't like it, but just please, you are no longer needing to do this. So yeah, I guess any good part-time jobs, anything that like you can get on campus that doesn't involve you having to commute to the job. A lot of my friends really struggled with that. They had to like buy cars to be able to commute to their jobs, and the car was an additional expense in addition to the job, which took away from saving money in the first place. So anything that you can get that's convenient, that doesn't require a whole lot of skill and preparation beforehand, to Zach's point, and that can pay you in a way that you think is worth your time.
Yeah. I have one very specific job that I think is actually a good one. It's Apple's customer support job. It's great for college students. I never did it, but I had friends that did it, and in general, I just think it's a really like ideal job for a college student because you choose your hours, you get paid well, and they have, I think, like some benefits with like for college students, like to help reimburse and whatnot. But what you're learning there is like technical troubleshooting that could potentially, you know, position you for a role like elsewhere. So I think those are good, but obviously, of course, as Bria mentioned, on-campus jobs. If you qualify for federal work aid, I forget what it's called.
Work study,
right? Those are great because, you know, anything that's like I would say try to be as selfish as you can with your time, more so than with your money, because your time is going to be more valuable in college, and you're going to want to be really being active, involved on campus, because that's what's going to be more enriching to you than anything. But I totally understand everyone's circumstances are different, but just think of that as you go through making those decisions. But
yeah, well, thank you. So I know Christina just posted the workshop survey, so I'm gonna, Christina, do you wanna introduce the survey?
Sure. Thank you so much. Again, before everyone leaves, we really do appreciate your feedback. So in the chat, I did just share the survey for the SurveyMonkey that pertains particularly to this workshop here. So if you can open it up and complete it at some point today, we'd really appreciate it. And right now, I'll go ahead and launch a poll, which is, again, pertaining to this workshop as well. It's just a couple questions. So do feel free to complete it. And if anyone else, I would like to say thank you to our panelists for joining us here today. Thank you to our attendees for watching and staying with us this whole afternoon. And that is all on my part. Thank you so much, panelists. Thank you. James, thank you.
Yeah, and I want to thank all of our MLT panelists as well. I hope for all of our attendees that you were able to see the importance of education in the path to getting a career in business or tech. There's a lot of interpersonal skills. There's a lot of technical skills that are required to get to this level. And I guess, do any panelists want to have, I guess, any final words of advice for our attendees here?
You can do it. You can do anything. Like, I know that sounds incredibly cheesy and broad, but truly, I did not realize what I could do, like, and again, benefits of college. I did not have enough information at my disposal to realize, and I didn't know enough to what to ask for when I was in high school to know all the wonderful things I could even have the opportunity to do. So just nothing is too big or too small, as a theme that you've heard throughout the last hour is like, man, something's like some job out there is perfect for you. It just doesn't exist yet. And if it doesn't exist yet, you can create it with all of the different resources we've got at the disposal with careers having to do with the internet. So just don't be discouraged. Don't think that you like a situation that you're unhappy with, you're stuck with. Like there's nothing but positive things, and there's nothing but opportunity coming for you up next. I know the COVID-19 and the pandemic certainly changed a lot of plans for that, but that doesn't change like the outlook you have for your future. Like, we're going to get through this pandemic thing and things are going to go back to normal and we're all going to be better for it. and just know that there's nothing too big or too small that you can do with your life. And that's what I wish I knew when I was in high school anyway.
Thanks.
My guidance would be, if there's something that you find curious, like there's like a curious itch, go like try to find out what that is. You don't have to devote your life to it, but if there's something where you're like, I'm really interested in that, or I'm curious about that, like go and like spend a little time with it. So examples, like I loved photography and I took photography classes in college and it wasn't relevant to my major. But now when I review advertising, I have an eye for photography, unlike other people in the room. And so those things that you're really curious about could end up being the little details that set you apart in the future. So like chase those things, those little itches, and see where they go.
Beautiful. Well, thanks so much. I know we're at time now, so please fill out the survey. There's a survey from Silicon Valley Education Foundation in the chat. I know we're really grateful to be partnering on things like this, and certainly, for those of you who end up in college and decide to pursue career in business and tech, would love you to come through MLT as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.